The dead planet had no name. It floated in empty space, far from any star system that mattered. Dr. Sujin Lee stood on its gray surface and looked at the ruins around her. Ancient buildings crumbled into dust. Strange symbols covered broken walls. This place had been dead for millions of years. Sujin was an archaeologist from Earth. She studied old civilizations and lost cultures. Her team had been exploring dead worlds for 3 months. They found nothing interesting until today. Her scanner started beeping near a collapsed temple. Something was buried underneath. It took 6 hours to dig through the rubble. Her crew used laser cutters to clear the rocks. Finally, they found a metal door. It was sealed tight. The symbols on it were different from anything in the Galactic database. Sujin felt her heart beat faster. This could be important. The door opened with a loud hiss. Air rushed out from inside. The room beyond was dark. Sujin turned on her helmet light and stepped inside. The walls were covered with more symbols. In the center of the room stood a large crystal structure. It glowed with a soft blue light. Her scanner went crazy. The crystal was a data storage device. It was millions of years old but still working. Sujin carefully removed it from its stand. This was the discovery of a lifetime. She needed to tell her superiors immediately. 2 days later, Sujin stood in a military transport ship heading to the Galactic Council station. Captain Doyen Kim sat across from her. He was a decorated officer with sharp eyes and a serious face. Ambassador Hagen Park sat next to him. She was the lead human diplomat, known for her calm manner and quick thinking. Sujin explained her discovery. The crystal contained records from the precursors. The precursors were a legendary species that vanished millions of years ago. They had been the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Nobody knew what happened to them. Scientists had searched for precursor artifacts for centuries. This was the first major find. Captain Kim leaned forward. His voice was quiet but firm. He asked what the records contained. Sujin took a deep breath. The crystal held predictions about different species in the galaxy. The precursors had somehow known which species would rise to power. They had been right about everything so far. Ambassador Park looked worried. She asked if the records mentioned humans. Sujin nodded slowly. Yes, there was an entire section about humanity. The precursors had predicted human history with perfect accuracy. They knew about the world wars. They knew about nuclear weapons. They knew about space travel. Everything matched up to the present day, but there was more. The final section about humans was encrypted. It had a warning label that made Sujin's blood run cold. The label said extreme caution advised. Whatever the precursors wanted to say about humanity's future, they had locked it away behind the strongest encryption in the database. The Galactic Council station was enormous. It orbited a peaceful world at the center of Council space. 12 species made up the Council. They were the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They had maintained peace for millions of years. Humans were new members with only observer status. They could watch Council meetings but not vote. High Arbiter Vorath led the Council. He was a Keltharian, a species that looked like tall humanoids with silver skin and wise eyes. Vorath had ruled the Council for 3,000 years. He was known for his fair judgment and careful decisions. When he heard about the precursor crystal, he called an emergency session. The council chamber was a massive dome filled with seats for representatives from each species. Holographic displays floated in the air. Sujin stood at the center and presented her findings. She showed images from the dead planet. She explained how she found the crystal. Then she activated the data display. The hologram showed precursor text. A translation program converted it to language everyone could understand. The records began with general observations about galactic development. The precursors had studied every species. They predicted which ones would develop space travel. They predicted which ones would form alliances. They were never wrong. Then came the section about humans. Council members leaned forward in their seats. The hologram showed Earth's history. The precursors had known humans would be violent. They predicted the rise and fall of empires. They predicted industrial revolution. They predicted the atomic age. Every major event in human history was listed in the ancient text. The council chamber grew silent. Councilors looked at each other with concern. Some whispered quietly. The accuracy of the predictions was disturbing. If the precursors could see human history so clearly, what did they see in humanity's future? Why was that part encrypted? Why the warning? High Arbiter Vorath stood up. His voice echoed through the chamber. He said the council needed to know what the encrypted section contained. The precursors had never been wrong. If they warned about humans, there must be a good reason. The final prediction must be decoded. Ambassador Park rose from her seat. She spoke with controlled emotion. She said humans deserved privacy. The encrypted section might contain sensitive information. The precursors were gone. Their warnings came from a different time. Humanity had changed. They had grown. They deserved trust. A large council member stood up. His name was Thex, from the warrior species called the Draknath. He was covered in dark scales and had fierce yellow eyes. Thex said trust was earned through time. Humans had only been in space for 300 years. The council had existed for millions of years. If the precursors warned about humans, the council must listen. Other councilors began to argue. Some agreed with Ambassador Park. Others sided with Thex. The chamber filled with voices speaking in dozens of languages. Captain Kim stood next to Ambassador Park with his jaw clenched. He said nothing, but his hand rested on his military sidearm out of habit. High Arbiter Vorath raised his hand. Silence returned to the chamber. He made his decision. The encryption would be broken. The council needed to know what the precursors had seen. It was not about trust. It was about safety. The safety of trillions of beings across the galaxy. He looked at the human delegation with what might have been sympathy or fear. Perhaps both. The council assembled its best minds to work on the encryption. They would break it no matter how long it took. Sujin felt sick to her stomach. She had made this discovery. She had brought the crystal to the council. Now she might have exposed her entire species to judgment from beyond the grave. The precursors had seen something in humanity. Something that worried them enough to lock it away behind warnings and codes. Captain Kim put a hand on her shoulder. He told her she did the right thing. Secrets always came out eventually. Better to face this now than have it discovered later. Ambassador Park agreed, but looked troubled. She asked what could be so terrible that an ancient civilization would encrypt it. What had the precursors seen in humanity's future? What made humans special enough to warrant such extreme caution? As the council session ended, representatives from different species stared at the human delegation. Some looks were curious. Others were suspicious. A few showed fear. The encrypted message had not even been decoded yet. But it had already changed everything. Humanity's place in the galaxy suddenly felt very uncertain. Sujin looked at the precursor crystal one last time before it was taken to the decryption facility. The blue glow seemed darker now, less welcoming. It held secrets that might change the fate of her entire species. And there was nothing anyone could do but wait. The decryption facility was buried deep beneath the council station. It was a secure room filled with computer systems and analysis equipment. The best experts from every council species worked there. They had 3 days to break the precursor encryption. 3 days that felt like years. Chief Engineer Minho Choi represented humanity on the decryption team. He was a thin man with tired eyes and quick hands. Minho had studied ancient computer systems his whole life. He knew more about data encryption than anyone on Earth. But precursor technology was beyond anything he had seen before. The encryption was like a puzzle with a million pieces. Every time the team solved one layer, another appeared underneath. The precursors did not want this information found easily. They had built wall after wall to protect it. Minho wondered why they bothered to record it at all. Why write something down if you never wanted anyone to read it? Captain Kim visited the facility every few hours. He brought food and coffee. He encouraged the team to keep working. But Minho could see the worry in his eyes. Every council species watched and waited. News of the precursor warning had spread across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to know what it said about humans. On the 3rd day, Minho found a pattern in the code. It was small and easy to miss, but once he saw it, everything else made sense. The encryption was not random. It followed mathematical rules based on human psychology. The precursors had encrypted the message specifically so humans would have the best chance to decode it. They wanted humans to know their own future. Minho worked faster. His fingers flew across the holographic keyboard. Other team members watched in silence. The code started to break apart. Layer after layer fell away. Finally, after 70 hours of continuous work, the last wall came down. The encrypted section appeared on the main display. The team stopped moving. Everyone stared at the screen. The message was longer than expected. It filled dozens of pages. Mino felt his hands shake. He activated the translation program. Ancient precursor text converted to modern language. The words appeared one by one. Captain Kim read over Minho's shoulder. His face went pale. Ambassador Park stood behind them. She put a hand over her mouth. The message was clear. The precursors had seen humanity's potential. They had calculated every possible future, and what they found terrified them. The document described human traits in detail. It talked about human adaptability, how humans could survive in almost any environment, how they learned fast and changed quickly. It mentioned human emotional bonds, how humans formed packs and protected each other no matter the cost. It analyzed human resilience, how humans refused to give up even when facing certain death. But the precursors saw darkness too. They noted human aggression, the violent history, the weapons development. They predicted humans would create technology beyond their wisdom to control it, weapons that could destroy worlds, systems that could end entire civilizations. And humans would build these things while still being a young and unstable species. The worst part came at the end. The precursors made two predictions. In one future, humans became the galaxy's greatest hope. They spread peace and cooperation. They protected weaker species. They used their strength for good. In the other future, humans became destroyers. They conquered world after world. They could not be stopped. They would not be stopped. The precursors could not tell which future would happen. Both were equally possible. Everything depended on choices humans made. The message included a final warning. If humans reached the stars before achieving wisdom, none would stand against them. The galaxy should either isolate humanity completely or integrate them under strict supervision. There was no middle ground. High Arbiter Vorath called an emergency council meeting. All 12 species gathered in the main chamber. Security was tight. No reporters were allowed. What happened next would determine the future of human-alien relations, maybe the future of humanity itself. Minho presented the decoded message to the council. He read it word for word. The chamber was silent as death. When he finished, nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Counselor Thek stood up. His voice was hard and angry. Thek said the precursors were never wrong. Their predictions always came true. If they warned about humans, the council must act. Human space should be quarantined immediately. No human ships should leave their territory. No humans should serve on council stations. It was the only way to be safe. Other counselors agreed. They spoke of caution and security. They mentioned the violent human history, the wars, the weapons. How could the galaxy trust a species that killed billions of its own people? How could they risk letting humans spread across the stars? Ambassador Park rose to speak. Her voice was steady, but Minho could see her hands shaking. She said the precursors were wrong about one thing. They assumed humans had not changed. They assumed humans learned nothing from their mistakes. But humanity was different now. They had left behind old hatreds. They chose cooperation over conflict. They earned their place among the stars. Counselor Thex laughed. It was a harsh sound. He said pretty words meant nothing. Actions mattered. And human actions spoke clearly. Humans built weapons they promised never to use. They explored space faster than any species in history. They pushed boundaries and broke rules. This was not wisdom. This was danger. Captain Kim stood up. He asked permission to speak. High Arbiter Vorath nodded. Kim's voice was calm but strong. He said the council was afraid. Fear was understandable, but fear led to bad decisions. The precursors saw two possible futures for humanity, one good and one terrible. The council's reaction right now would help determine which future came true. If the council chose isolation, humans would feel betrayed. They would grow bitter and angry. They would see other species as enemies. That path led to the dark future the precursors warned about. But if the council chose trust, humans would prove worthy of it. They would become the protectors the galaxy needed. The choice was not about controlling humans. It was about believing in them. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported isolation. Others called for giving humans a chance. A few suggested compromise solutions. Everyone had an opinion. Nobody could agree. High Arbiter Vorath tried to restore order, but the voices were too loud. Finally, Vorath announced a decision. The council would delay the vote. Captain Kim would have 24 hours to present evidence of human character. He could show anything he wanted. Bring any witnesses. Share any information. After that, the council would vote. The vote would be final. Either humans gained full acceptance or faced complete isolation. There would be no second chance. The meeting ended. Council members filed out of the chamber in small groups. They whispered to each other. Some looked at the human delegation with suspicion. Others showed pity. A few seemed genuinely curious about what evidence Kim could possibly present. Back in their quarters, the human team gathered. Captain Kim, Ambassador Park, Dr. Soo-Jin Lee, and Engineer Min-Ho Choi sat around a table. They looked exhausted. The weight of their entire species rested on their shoulders. What could they show the council? What evidence would prove humanity deserved trust? Kim made a decision. He opened his communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. The message was short, but its contents would shock the galaxy. He was calling in reinforcements. Not weapons or soldiers, something more powerful. The truth about what humans had been hiding all along. Ambassador Park asked what he was doing. Kim looked at her with tired eyes. He said the precursors were right about one thing. Humans had developed weapons beyond their wisdom. But they were also wrong about something important. Humans had developed the wisdom not to use them. It was time to prove it. The next 24 hours would determine everything. The future of humanity, the future of the galaxy, and perhaps the answer to the question the precursors could not solve. Which path would humans choose? Protection or destruction? Hope or fear? Only time would tell. Admiral Bora Yoon stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable. Around her, 23 human warships moved in perfect formation through faster-than-light space. They would emerge near the battle zone in minutes. Her crew worked efficiently. No panic, no fear. Just focused determination. Yoon was a veteran of many conflicts. She had fought pirates in the outer colonies. She had defended trade routes against raiders. But this was different. This was not defending human interests. This was defending aliens who barely trusted humans. Some of her officers questioned the mission. Why risk human lives for people who called them dangerous? Yoon's answer was simple. Because it was right. Because people needed help. Because this was what humans did. They protected those who could not protect themselves. It did not matter if those people were human or alien. Life was life. Worth was worth. And anyone who threatened innocent life would face human steel. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Space filled with chaos. 3 council worlds burned. Enemy ships circled the planets like predators. They fired on evacuation shuttles. They targeted hospitals. They showed no mercy. The attackers were called the Krell. They were a species the Council had never encountered before. But their technology was advanced. Deadly Yoon counted 50 Krell warships. Her fleet had 23. The enemy outnumbered them 2-1. Worse, the Krell ships were heavily armed. Their weapons matched descriptions from the precursor warnings. This was exactly the kind of threat the ancient records had predicted. A species that built weapons without wisdom. A species that conquered without mercy. Yoon opened a channel to all human ships. Her voice was calm. She gave simple orders. Protect the civilians. Disable enemy vessels when possible. Use lethal force only when necessary. And no matter what happened, maintain honor. The galaxy was watching. Humans needed to show who they really were. The human fleet moved forward. The Krell noticed them immediately. Several enemy ships broke formation to engage. They clearly expected an easy victory. Humans were outnumbered. Humans were unknown. The Krell assumed they would be weak. They were wrong. The first engagement lasted 30 seconds. Human ships moved with perfect coordination. They dodged Krell fire with impossible precision. Their return fire was surgically accurate. 3 Krell warships lost their weapon systems. 2 more lost engines. Not a single ship was destroyed. All were disabled, alive but unable to fight. The Krell realized their mistake. They concentrated their entire fleet against the humans. 50 ships against 23. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked through space. The battle became desperate. Human shields flickered under the assault. But the fleet held formation. They protected each other. No ship fought alone. On the Indomitable's bridge, Ensign Taehyun Cho monitored the weapon systems. He was young, only 24 years old. This was his first major battle. His hand shook slightly as he watched the tactical display. A Krell destroyer was badly damaged. Its crew was evacuating. But the ship was drifting toward a civilian station. If it crashed, thousands would die. Cho had a clean shot. He could destroy the Krell ship. Blow it to pieces before it reached the station. His finger hovered over the firing button. But something stopped him. The Krell crew was abandoning ship. They were enemies. They had killed civilians, but they were also living beings trying to survive. Could he kill them when they could not fight back? Admiral Yoon saw the situation. She started to give an order. The Krell ship had to be destroyed. There was no choice. But Cho spoke first. He said he had another option. He could use a tractor beam to redirect the ship. Guide it away from the station. It was risky. The Indomitable would be vulnerable while the tractor beam operated, but no one would die. Yoon hesitated for only a moment. Then she approved. Cho activated the tractor beam. The Indomitable grabbed the drifting Krell destroyer. Energy weapons from other enemy ships hammered the human flagship. Shields dropped to 20%, then 10%. The crew braced for hull breach. But Cho held steady. He guided the Krell ship away from the station, away from the civilians, to empty space where it could not hurt anyone. The Krell crew watched from their escape pods. They saw a human ship take damage to save them, enemy soldiers sparing enemy lives. It made no sense. In Krell culture, weakness was death. Mercy was foolish. But this was not weakness. This was something else. Something they did not understand. The battle continued for 3 more hours. Human ships moved through the chaos like dancers. They disabled enemy weapons. They protected civilian transports. They formed shields around evacuation sites. When Krell ships surrendered, humans accepted immediately. When enemy crew abandoned their vessels, humans rescued them. Every action followed strict rules. Rules about honor, about mercy, about the value of life. Finally, the Krell commander realized they could not win. The humans were too skilled, too disciplined, too determined. He sent a surrender signal. All remaining Krell ships powered down their weapons. The battle was over. 3 human ships were heavily damaged. 2 needed extensive repairs. But not a single human vessel was destroyed. Not a single human life was lost. The cost for the Krell was different. 18 ships disabled, 12 captured, 20 surrendered, but 0 destroyed. Every Krell crew survived, even those who fought to the last moment. Even those who targeted civilians. Humans showed mercy to all of them, not because they deserved it, but because it was right. Admiral Yoon contacted the Council worlds below. She offered medical assistance, engineering support, whatever they needed. The alien civilians were cautious at first, but as human ships approached, they saw something unexpected. Human medics treating both Council citizens and captured Krell soldiers. Human engineers repairing alien stations while their own ship still sparked with damage. Humans putting others first. On one of the damaged worlds, a human rescue team worked in a collapsed building. They searched for survivors. A young alien girl was trapped under rubble. The building was unstable. It could collapse completely at any moment. The safe option was to wait for heavy equipment. But the girl was running out of air. A human soldier named Corporal Mira went into the building alone. She crawled through tight spaces. She lifted debris with her bare hands. The building shook. Dust fell like rain. Other humans shouted for her to come back. But she kept going. She found the girl, pulled her free, carried her out just as the structure collapsed behind them. The human soldier and the alien child emerged from the dust together, both alive. Both safe. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species heard the story. Humans arrived outnumbered. Humans fought with honor. Humans showed mercy to their enemies. Humans risked their lives for aliens they barely knew. The footage was everywhere. Humans rescuing Krell prisoners. Humans treating alien wounded. Humans rebuilding destroyed homes. Back on the Council station, Captain Kim watched the reports with Ambassador Park and Dr. Lee. They saw the images. They heard the testimonies. Civilians praising human courage. Even some Krell prisoners admitting they were wrong about humanity. The Krell had assumed humans would be like them. Brutal, merciless, conquering. They learned otherwise. High Arbiter Vorath called for an emergency council session. Every representative gathered to hear the battle reports. They watched the recordings. They saw everything humans did. Every choice. Every sacrifice. Every act of mercy, even under fire. The chamber was silent when the presentations ended. Counselor Thex sat in his seat looking troubled. He had argued against trusting humans. He had called them dangerous. He had warned they would betray the council. But the evidence before him told a different story. Humans were dangerous. The precursors were right about that. But dangerous to whom? Not to innocents, not to those seeking peace, only to those who threatened others, only to those who chose violence over mercy. Admiral Yoon appeared via hologram. She gave her official report, casualties, damage assessments, tactical analysis. Her voice was professional, matter of fact. She did not boast. She did not ask for praise. She simply reported what happened, what her crew did, what they believed in. At the end, she said something that made several counselors look down at their hands. She said humans did not come to the battle because the council authorized it. They came because it was right. They would have come even without permission, even if it meant punishment, even if it meant isolation, because that was who humans were. They protected those who could not protect themselves. It was not a choice. It was their nature. The council had its answer. Humans in battle were exactly what the precursors predicted. Dangerous, unstoppable, overwhelming, but dangerous to evil, not to good. The real test was complete. Now came the judgment, and the future of human-alien relations hung in the balance once more. The council chamber filled with representatives from all 12 species. Captain Kim stood at the center platform. Behind him floated massive holographic displays. Ambassador Park and Dr. Soo-Jin Lee sat in the human delegation area. They looked nervous but determined. This was humanity's one chance to prove itself. High Arbiter Vorath called the session to order. His silver face was unreadable. He gave Kim permission to begin. The fate of billions of humans now depended on what happened in the next few hours. Kim took a deep breath and activated the first display. The hologram showed space. A human cargo ship drifted near an asteroid field. Its engines were dead. Life support was failing. The distress signal reached a nearby ship. But that ship was not human. It belonged to the Vraxi, a species that had poor relations with Earth. There had been border disputes and trade arguments. No love was lost between the two peoples. The human military vessel Shadowrunner received the same distress call. They were closer than the Vraxi ship. But regulations said cargo ships should wait for civilian rescue. Military ships had more important duties. The captain of Shadowrunner faced a choice. Follow regulations and let the Vraxi handle it, or break protocol to save human lives. The hologram played the recorded communication. The Shadowrunner's captain contacted the Vraxi vessel. He said his ship was better equipped for rescue operations. He offered to handle the situation. The Vraxi captain was suspicious. Why would human military help civilians from another species? What did humans want in return? The human captain's response was simple. People needed help. That was all that mattered. The Shadowrunner reached the cargo ship first. They found 32 Vraxi workers inside. The life support had completely failed. Several workers were already unconscious. Minutes more and they would all be dead. Human Marines went into the damaged ship wearing emergency gear. They carried the Vraxi workers to safety one by one. The hologram showed everything. Human soldiers risking their lives. Vraxi civilians too weak to walk. The careful transport through damaged corridors. The emergency medical treatment. All provided without question or payment. Kim paused the display. He told the council this was not an isolated incident. He activated more holograms. They showed dozens of similar events. Human ships rescuing alien crews. Human doctors treating alien patients. Human engineers repairing alien stations. Species that humans had no treaties with. Sometimes species that humans had conflicts with. It did not matter. When people needed help, humans gave it. Counselor Thex stood up. His voice was challenging. He said these actions meant nothing. Any species could show mercy when it was convenient. The real test was power. What did humans do when they had the advantage? When nobody was watching? When they could take what they wanted without consequence? Kim nodded slowly. He said that was a fair question. The hologram changed again. This time it showed classified military files. Red warning symbols flashed. Counselors leaned forward. What were humans about to reveal? The new display showed weapons. Advanced weapons. The kind the council had never seen before. Kinetic cannons that could crack planets. Biological weapons that could destroy ecosystems. Electronic warfare systems that could shut down entire civilizations. The council chamber went silent. These weapons were beyond anything in the galactic database. Several counselors looked shocked. A few looked frightened. Counselor Thex was on his feet immediately. He demanded an explanation. Humans had secret weapons? Weapons that violated a dozen council treaties? This proved the precursor warning was correct. Humans were dangerous. They built tools of destruction. They hid their true power. Kim let the anger wash over him. He waited for silence. Then he spoke. Yes, humans had these weapons. They developed them years ago, long before making first contact with the council. But here was the important part. Humans never used them, not once. Not even when it would have been easy. Not even when it would have saved human lives. A new officer entered the chamber. Commander Ji-won Han was a senior naval officer from Earth. She carried classified files. Kim introduced her to the council. Han's voice was professional and clear. She explained human military doctrine. The weapons existed as deterrents, to make sure nobody attacked Earth. But the doctrine strictly prohibited first use. Humans would only defend, never attack. Han showed more files. Battle simulations, war games, strategic analyses. In every scenario where humans could have used overwhelming force, they chose other options. Negotiation, retreat, containment. Even in simulations where using the weapons would guarantee victory, human commanders chose restraint. The culture of the military emphasized protection over destruction. Counselor Thex was not satisfied. He asked why humans kept these weapons secret. If they had no intention of using them, why hide them? Why not register them with the council like all other advanced civilizations? Secrecy suggested guilt. It suggested humans knew their weapons were wrong. Commander Han looked at Thex directly. She said humans kept them secret because of reactions exactly like this one. The moment humans revealed advanced weapons, other species assumed the worst. They saw humans as threats, not partners, not friends, just dangers to be controlled. Humans wanted to be judged by their actions, not their capabilities. Ambassador Park stood up. She added context. Humans remembered their own history. When powerful nations had weapons, weaker nations lived in fear. That fear created hostility. Hostility created conflict. Conflict created war. Humans did not want to repeat those mistakes on a galactic scale, so they built defenses but kept them quiet. They hoped to earn trust through deeds before revealing their full strength. Dr. Sujin Lee requested permission to speak. Vorath allowed it. Lee showed a historical analysis. She compared humanity to other species at similar development stages. Most species expanded aggressively. They conquered neighbors. They extracted resources. They dominated weaker civilizations. This was considered normal. Expected even, but humans were different. When they reached space, they found other intelligent life immediately. The Council had been watching Earth for decades. They made first contact only when humans developed faster than light travel. At that point, humans already had the power to threaten Council worlds. But they chose diplomacy. They asked for friendship. They requested observer status. They followed Council rules even though nobody could force them to. Lee showed statistics. Human crime rates, human charity rates, human scientific cooperation, human cultural exchange. Every measurement showed humans working toward integration, toward cooperation, toward peace. Yes, humans had a violent past, but every species did. The question was not where humans came from. It was where they were going. A small counselor stood up. Mirax was a luminari, a species known for wisdom and patience. Her voice was soft but clear. She said she had watched humans carefully for 20 years. She saw their struggles, their doubts, their determination to be better than their history. She believed humans deserved a chance, not because they were perfect, but because they tried to be. Other counselors began to speak. Some agreed with Mirax, others remained suspicious. The debate went on for hours. Kim stood at the center answering every question, showing every file, being completely honest about human capabilities and human flaws, hiding nothing. This was the test. Complete transparency or continued isolation. Finally, High Arbiter Vorath called for order. He said the council had heard enough evidence. The presentations were complete, but he would not call for a vote yet. Something more important had just happened. A distress signal was coming from the border regions. Multiple worlds were under attack. The attackers used weapons similar to those the precursors had warned about in other sections of the database. The council fleet was 2 weeks away from the attack zone. Billions of civilians would die before help arrived. But there was one fleet close enough to respond in time. The human battle group stationed at the edge of Council space. Admiral Borayun commanded 23 human warships. They could reach the battle in 6 hours. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some counselors demanded human help. Others refused to trust human military forces near council worlds. Thex said it was too dangerous. This could be a human trick, a way to position forces for invasion. Better to let the civilians die than risk human betrayal. Vorath raised his hand. The chamber went quiet. His face showed the weight of impossible choices. He looked at Captain Kim. He asked a simple question. If the council authorized human intervention, would humans come? Would they risk their lives for aliens they barely knew? Would they fight and possibly die for people who did not trust them? Kim did not hesitate. He activated his communicator and contacted Admiral Yoon. The hologram showed her on the bridge of her flagship. Kim explained the situation. He asked if her fleet could respond. Yoon looked at her crew, then back at Kim. Her answer was one word. Yes, Vorath made his decision. He authorized human military intervention. The humans would go to the battle zone. They would engage the attackers. They would protect Council civilians, and the entire galaxy would watch what happened next. This was the real test. Not words or presentations. Actions under fire. Choices made when lives hung in the balance. The human fleet jumped to faster than light speed. They would arrive at the battle in hours. The council could only wait and see. The council chamber was packed. Every representative attended. Even species with only minor roles came to witness the historic session. The human delegation sat in their assigned area. Captain Kim, Ambassador Park, Dr. Lee, Engineer Choi, and Commander Han. They looked tired but calm. Whatever happened now, they had done everything possible. High Arbiter Vorath called the session to order. He said the council would hear testimony from those who witnessed human actions during the battle. First to speak were civilians from the attacked worlds. One by one, they came forward. Each told their story. Each described what humans did. A mother from the planet Valoris spoke first. She held her young daughter close. She said human soldiers rescued them from a burning building. The soldiers wore heavy armor and carried powerful weapons. But they moved carefully around the frightened child. They spoke softly. They offered food and water. They stayed until the family felt safe. The mother cried as she spoke. She said humans were heroes. True heroes. An old teacher from the station above Remath told his story. His school was hit during the attack. Children were trapped. Human medics arrived within minutes. They worked for hours pulling students from the wreckage. They treated injuries. They calmed fears. Not a single child died. The teacher said he had lived for 90 years. He had seen many species. But he never saw such compassion from warriors. More civilians testified. Engineers who worked alongside human repair crews. Doctors who watched human medics treat everyone equally. Officials who saw human ships form protective barriers around evacuation zones. Every story was the same. Humans risked everything to save others. They asked for nothing in return. They acted not from duty but from conscience. Then came an unexpected witness. A Krell prisoner requested permission to speak. The council was surprised but allowed it. The Krell commander stood in the center of the chamber. His hands were bound. Guards surrounded him. But his voice was clear and strong. He said the Krell came to conquer. They chose council worlds because they seemed weak. Protected by old species with old ways. Species that had forgotten how to fight. The Krell expected easy victory. They found humans instead. Humans who fought like demons but showed mercy like saints. The Krell commander said he lost the battle. But he learned something more valuable. He learned that strength without honor was hollow. That victory without mercy was meaningless. The commander looked at the human delegation. He said humans defeated his fleet completely. They could have killed every Krell soldier. Nobody would have questioned it. The Krell attacked first, targeted civilians, showed no mercy, but humans spared them anyway, treated prisoners with dignity, provided medical care, even apologized for injuries caused during capture. The commander said he was alive only because humans chose honor over revenge. Counselor Thex stood up. He looked uncomfortable. His voice was rough with emotion. He said he owed the humans an apology. He had called them dangerous. He had argued for isolation. He had feared them. But he was wrong. Humans were dangerous. The precursors were right about that. But they were dangerous the way a storm was dangerous, the way fire was dangerous, destructive to evil but vital for life. The galaxy needed that danger. Dr. Lee requested permission to speak one final time. Vorath nodded. Lee approached the central platform. She held a datapad. She said she had continued studying the precursor crystal. There was one more layer of encryption, one final message hidden deeper than all the others. She had only discovered it after the previous sections were decoded, the holographic display activated. It showed precursor text, ancient words appearing line by line. The translation program converted them. Every eye in the chamber read the final message together. The words changed everything. The precursors wrote that humanity would indeed become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But not in the way most would expect. Humans were dangerous because they refused to abandon others, because they showed mercy even to enemies, because they valued life above power, because they chose compassion over conquest. This danger would spread. It would infect other species. It would challenge every authoritarian government, every oppressive regime, every culture built on domination. The precursors realized this too late. They built a civilization based on perfect logic, pure efficiency, maximum order, but they forgot something essential. They forgot compassion. They forgot mercy. They forgot what it meant to care for those weaker than themselves. By the time they understood their mistake, it was too late. Their civilization was already dying from within. Cold. Empty. Without purpose beyond survival. The precursors predicted that humans would remind the galaxy of what mattered. Not power, not technology, not perfect order, but connection, empathy, the willingness to sacrifice for others. These traits made humans dangerous to any species that ruled through fear. But they made humans essential for any civilization that wanted to be more than just surviving. They made humans the species that could save others from becoming like the precursors. Empty and alone, the chamber was silent. Counselors looked at each other. Many seemed shaken. The precursors had not feared human weapons. They had not feared human violence. They feared human compassion. They feared it because they had lost their own. They encrypted the message because the truth was painful. The precursors died not from external enemies but from internal emptiness. From becoming too logical, too efficient, too perfect. From forgetting how to care. High Arbiter Vorath stood. His silver face showed deep thought. He said he understood now. The council had existed for millions of years. Peace was maintained through laws and regulations. Through careful balance and measured responses. It worked, it was efficient. But somewhere along the way, the council had become cautious. Risk-averse. They stopped fighting for ideals and started managing problems. They forgot what the precursors learned too late. That survival without purpose was not worth having. Vorath called for a vote, not just on human membership, but on human partnership, full integration into the council, equal status with the oldest species, the right to vote on all matters. The trust they had earned through action, he asked each counselor to consider carefully. This was not about fear. It was about hope, about choosing the galaxy they wanted to build. One based on power or one based on principles, the vote was taken. One by one, counselors made their choice. Some voted immediately, others took time. But the result was the same. 12 species, 12 votes, all in favor. Unanimous approval. Humans were granted full council membership. Equal partners in galactic governance. Trusted allies, friends. The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives stood. Some cheered. Others approached the human delegation to offer congratulations. Captain Kim looked overwhelmed. Ambassador Park wiped tears from her eyes. Dr. Lee smiled for the first time in days. Engineer Choi and Commander Han hugged each other. They had done it. Humanity was accepted, not despite their nature but because of it. Later, High Arbiter Vorath met privately with Captain Kim. They stood on an observation deck looking out at the stars. Vorath said he was 3,000 years old. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had witnessed countless wars and endless peace. But he never saw anything like humans. They reminded him of something he thought was lost. Youth. Hope. The belief that things could be better. Kim asked if Vorath was afraid. Afraid that humans would change the council. Change the galaxy. Vorath smiled. He said he was terrified. Change was always frightening. But stagnation was worse. The Council had maintained peace for millions of years. But they had also maintained distance, cold efficiency, careful neutrality. Maybe it was time for something warmer, something more alive, something human. Kim said humans would make mistakes. They were young, inexperienced, sometimes foolish. They would need guidance, patience, understanding. Vorath nodded. He said that was what partnership meant. Learning from each other. Humans would teach the Council compassion. The Council would teach humans wisdom. Together they would build something neither could achieve alone. The news spread across human space within hours. Earth celebrated. Colonies threw festivals. Ships broadcast messages of joy. Humanity was no longer isolated, no longer judged by their past. They were full members of galactic civilization, partners with species millions of years older, trusted with responsibility, honored with friendship. Dr. Lee wrote her final report on the precursor crystal. She included everything: the warnings, the predictions, the hidden truth. She ended with a note. The precursors tried to warn the galaxy about humans, but their warning was not what anyone expected. They did not warn that humans would destroy. They warned that humans would remind others what they had forgotten. That compassion was stronger than conquest. That mercy was braver than vengeance. That protecting life mattered more than taking it. Months later, Admiral Yoon returned to Earth. Her fleet was honored with parades, medals, speeches. But Yoon was most proud of a small ceremony at a military academy. Ensign Tai-Hyun Cho was promoted for his actions during the battle, for choosing mercy when death would have been easier, for showing what it meant to be human even under fire. Yoon pinned the medal on his uniform herself. She told him he represented the best of humanity. Not their weapons, not their tactics, their heart,